Afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar entitled Mastering Your Credit Score. I have a few housekeeping items before we get started with the webinar, but if you would like to use the closed captioning, please click on the CC and then show subtitles to turn the captions on. And although this presentation is being recorded, only the presenters will be recorded, and participant questions will not be identified. So feel free to ask whatever you're interested in. My name is Tina Alou, and I'm with Cambridge Economic Opportunity Committee, or CEOC, as most people know us. And today's webinar is part of the city's Housed in Cambridge Information to Open Doors campaign. And Housed in Cambridge is a citywide outreach, education, and information campaign that's designed to promote and inform residents about all things housing. We've been holding monthly webinars on various housing topics since April of last year. And when we are able to gather in person, we'll also offer in-person trainings. Hopefully that will be soon. We also want to call your attention to an online interactive guide that can be accessed at cambridgemass.gov/housing guide, and we'll share that resource with you. The guide includes information on numerous Cambridge nonprofits and the resources and services that they offer. So please share anything that you learn with your family, friends, and neighbors, and stay connected through the city's website and the city's social media platforms. Watch for upcoming panels and let us know what you think would be helpful. But before I turn it over to Ian Davis from Just to Start to discuss credit reporting, I want to introduce Crystal Rosa, who's the program administrator for the City Human Rights Commission, and she's our technical guru for the Housed in Cambridge campaign. And she'll explain how to ask a question. Crystal?
Hi, thank you, Tina, for that lovely introduction. I'm gonna just click to the next slide. And there we go. So to ask a question, please use the Q&A box. It'll be located down at the bottom of the screen. If you hover, it should pop up. Only presenters will be able to view your questions. The presenters will verbally respond to as many questions as possible throughout the presentation. Typed questions will not be recorded. And if you choose to be anonymous, please make sure to click the box that says send anonymously if you do not want your name attached to the question. And you will receive a follow-up email, everyone who registers, with all the documents and resources and other announcements. So I'm going to stop sharing and there.
Great. Thank you, Crystal. And now I'm going to turn everything over to Ian. So Ian, here you go.
All right. Thanks for the introduction, Tina. So I'm Ian with Just to Start, and I'm an accredited financial counselor. I'm going to take everybody through a presentation that CEOC and Just to Start put together jointly to talk a little bit about credit. A little bit about credit building, understanding this system, and then some ways to actually bring up your score and be prepared for that housing search. So let's see if I can go ahead and share my screen. And there we go. Are we all set up? Everyone can see the screen?
Yes, looks good.
All right, perfect. So in terms of mastering your credit, one of the things we want to talk about is a credit checkup. So in the same way that you're going to want to go to the doctor each year, have a checkup, even if nothing's wrong, it's a really good idea to check up on your credit, to get access to your credit report and find out what your credit score is. When you're searching for housing, a credit issue could prevent you from being able to move into a unit that you like. If you know beforehand that there might be some issues, you can begin taking preventative steps. And if you're just interested in raising your credit score, it's a good idea to check up on where you're at right now and maybe even get a little bit of coaching on how to increase that score. So why should people care? There's kind of two sides to this thing. It's a double-edged sword. There are two good reasons to care about it that could be negative. So in terms of housing, landlords will often not rent to people who have low credit scores. If you have a low credit score, it's very hard to get a mortgage from a bank. And then the other factor that that your credit might affect is actually employment now. So whether this is accurate or not, employers may use a low credit score to argue that you can't be trusted in a job that works with money. Now, obviously, that doesn't reflect on anyone's character, but it is a thing that they might use in making an employment decision. On the opposite side of things, credit is an incredible asset. So when, for example, if you, let's say it's the middle of summer and your air conditioner breaks and you're waiting for that next paycheck to come in, when you have credit, when you've got a credit card with a good limit, you're able to go out, purchase that needed air conditioner during one of our many heat waves, stay cool, and then pay it back over time. Credit is also an asset when you do want to go look for permanent housing that you're buying and owning. Then a good credit score opens a lot of doors in terms of the mortgages you can obtain. It brings down the cost of things like buying a vehicle. So a higher credit score means a lower interest rate on a car loan and therefore lower monthly payments. So the better your credit is, the cheaper things actually become. So what is this system? The credit system is essentially two parts. We have the three credit bureaus, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. And then we have the major credit score company, which for most banks, most landlords, most everyone, they're going to use Fair Isaac Company or FICO. So what's the difference between the bureau and FICO? A credit bureau just collects information. So let's say you take out a credit card, then that credit card company is going to send a report over to the three credit bureaus stating, so-and-so took out a credit card under these terms, and that's something they have now. So that information is sent to the bureau. The bureau puts it in a little file folder. And as you do different things using credit, that little file folder adds more and more pages saying your credit history. So credit reports are big, long, complicated documents with a lot of information. A credit score is a 3-digit number that is supposed to summarize the likelihood that you're going to pay back a loan. And so people could hear there's a little bit of equivocation. A credit score may not accurately reflect the likelihood that you will pay something back, right? Things happen in life that could bring a credit score down, but a person may still be very trustworthy to pay things back. That score could be a barrier. And so the summarizing of information is the main reason that people use a credit score. It's really hard to train someone to read a full credit report, understand it completely, and then make business decisions based off of it. Whereas the credit score is just a 3-digit number. It's very easy to train an employee to pull a credit score and then to take that number and compare it to a chart. and to say, okay, if their score is above a certain amount, we're going to approve them for credit, and you'll give them this interest rate. If they have a really good credit score, we're going to approve them and we're going to give them a better interest rate. And so that's kind of the idea. Is reports are very complicated. They have lots of information. The score is very simple, but it also doesn't have a lot of information that someone might use to understand your credit history. So the main thing when it comes to your credit score is to understand that if you change what's on the report, you change what's going to be on your credit score. So FICO uses the information on the report to calculate the score. Each report could actually have different information. So someone sent a question ahead of this webinar asking, hey, each of the credit bureaus seems to have different information. And that means I have different scores from each bureau. And that's definitely a thing. So when you see an inconsistency like that, you want to get a hold of each of your credit reports, double check all the information, see, there's probably an account on one that's not on another. There may be a difference in how payments have been reported on one versus another. And so that would be information you might want to either file a dispute on or talk to the creditor to have changed so that all of your reports are identical, and therefore, regardless of which credit bureau they pull information from, you're going to get the same score. So like I said before, most people who work in relation to credit now are probably not really going to look at your report. You will see that with if you apply for a mortgage, if you apply for a car loan, some type of big purchase, people do more often pull your full credit report and they want to see everything, all of the information. If you're in Macy's and they offer you a store credit card, they are not going to pull your full report. The likeliest thing is that they will check your score and then they'll make a decision based off of that. That can actually also be true for things like housing. Someone will have a kind of tenant check system. Part of that will include your credit score. It may include history from other databases, but they're probably not going to look at your full credit report either. And so that can be an issue. If someone only cares about the score, then they may not even see the story that your report could tell them. And that's why we want to change what's on the report to improve the score. So what are the other ways that I can change what's on my credit report? So a couple of things. One of those is habits. Another is disputes. And then the final thing is addressing the information that has been reported to the credit bureau. So in terms of habits, here's all of credit building in one sentence. You need to have credit, you need to use it, you need to pay in full and on time, and if the type of credit you're using has a limit, you need to use less than 30% of the limit. So keep it under 30% of the limit. What do I mean by that? Let's say I have a credit card with a $1,000 limit. I would never want to put more than $300 onto that credit card because that means I'm using 30% or less of the limit. When you get above that, it actually starts to hurt your credit score to be using that card. The other major thing is keeping your applications for new credit to a minimum. So anytime pen and paper get involved or a business decision is about to be made, that's what's called a hard inquiry. So whether you see it or not, lawyers are getting involved. People are making a business decision and they're using the credit report or the credit score to make that decision. And they want to keep you from doing that very often, right? If there weren't damage to your credit score, people might go out and apply for all of the credit cards that were possibly available to them. That's a lot of work for all sorts of people in the background. And so when you're making that serious inquiry or that serious question about how is my credit really, that damages your score a little bit every time. However, when you just check your own credit for information, that's what's called a soft inquiry. So no business decisions are getting made. No lawyers are getting involved, no pens and papers. And so there's no effect to your score with a soft inquiry. And it's important to know when you want to check your score or check your credit report that you're doing a soft inquiry. Most things you can readily access online these days are soft inquiries. They aren't going to hurt your score to check. So then the final thing is time. So you need 7 or more years of credit history for your best possible score. So why is that? The idea of the credit score is that they're kind of making a best guess or a prediction about your credit behavior based off of your past history. If they only have 1 year of that history to look at, their guess may not be so good. If they have 7 years of history to look at, then that's a lot more information. And so their prediction or their best guess of how you'll do is going to be a lot better. In the same way, items age off of your report every 7 years. So they basically take a single 7-year snapshot from the day that you check your credit. So for example, if I had a credit card 13 years ago, it's going to have aged off of my credit report. It won't appear on that information, and I actually won't have a credit score as a result. I need to have had active credit in the last 7 years in order to have a credit report and credit score. So then the final thing I want to note here when we're talking about age, there's also something called a statute of limitations on debt in Massachusetts. So if I have a credit card and I wind up not being able to pay it back, then the credit card company has 6 years to try and collect that money from me. And if we go to 6 years and a day, 7 years, then that debt, they no longer have the ability to take me to court to collect that money. So it's important to know the statute of limitations on debt as well. If it's 6 years or older, they can no longer collect on it. Now, that doesn't mean it won't affect your score. You could have a collections debt from 6.5 years ago that will still be on your report and still affect your score, even if they can't actually collect that money from you. So just something to be aware of. The next tool that we have to affect what's on the report is disputes. So you should check the information on your report, and then anything that's incorrect, you should dispute. So most often, this will be things like former addresses, telephone numbers, previous names that you may have used. It's important to dispute those items because the credit report is a big database. And if there's wrong bits of information on the report, they may pull in other information that also should not be there. So the first thing to check is names, addresses, and phone numbers. There's of course other information that might be on there that is also inaccurate. So the credit bureau only has the information that is reported to them. And if there's wrong information being reported to them, then that may need to be disputed in a slightly different way. When you file a dispute against something, it's actually going to be taken off of your report for 30 days. They're going to investigate it. If that item is accurate, it's going to go back onto your report. If that item is incorrect, that it wasn't true, it'll stay off. When you go to file a dispute, you want to do it through the credit bureau's website. Credit Karma used to have this. A number of other credit apps had an option where you could just file a dispute with a couple of clicks of a button. That means you're not attaching documentation. There's nothing to back up your dispute and to say, no, really, this should be removed from my report. The credit industry quickly caught on to that. And I have seen response letters so you file a dispute, the company investigates, they send a letter back with their decision. I have seen those where it actually says, it looks like you're trying to file a dispute using a third-party credit repair app. And they just say, we're going to ignore this. That's kind of questionable, but if it's done through a third-party app, they may just not take it seriously. So, and whether they should be able to do that or not is certainly up for discussion, but it's what they're going to do. So you need to file your dispute through the credit bureau website. So then the final thing is the reported information. So when if I've taken out credit, let's say I made all of the payments that I needed to make on a credit card. And the creditor, whoever gave me that credit card, they say, well, no, you missed a payment. And I know that that's not true because I have a receipt for the payment that I made. The creditor may report that to the bureau. And if I file my dispute with the bureau will go back and talk to the creditor and say, is this correct? And the creditor will say, yeah, they missed that payment. And my dispute won't go through. I'll still have it on my report. And that can be very frustrating when I know I paid. Now, I could then go and talk to the creditor and I could say, hey, I know you're reporting it this way based off of whatever information you're using, but let me show you this receipt. Here's my receipt. I did make that payment. You guys should change that. At that point, the creditor may say, you're right, we're sorry about that. They'll change the information. And then the next time they send a report out to the bureau, it will change what's on your credit report. So sometimes you need to dispute on the actual credit report. And sometimes it's good to go back and talk to the creditor, especially if the issue is a payment you made that they're not reporting, or they're reporting a wrong balance, any other issue that the original creditor has a direct view on, you might want to first go and talk to the creditor. Okay, so what do I do if I have no credit whatsoever? I've never had a credit card, I've never had a loan. How do I build my credit? If you go and apply for a regular credit card, they're likely to say, you have no credit history, and so we're not going to give you a credit card. You're going to need to go to probably one of two products. And so this type of product is available from many different places. The first one is a credit builder loan. So with a credit builder loan, you agree to pay a certain amount of money for every month for a period of time, just like a regular loan. However, it's reversed. You pay over time, and at the end of that, they're going to send you back the money that you've paid minus some fee for having reported all of that to the credit bureaus. There's also these things called secured credit cards. So with a secured credit card, I hand the bank money, or whoever this creditor is, I hand them money, and they lock that money away in a box. And then they give me a credit card where my balance is equal to the money that I gave. Then I get to use that credit card just like a regular one. And if I ever don't pay it off, they'll take the money out of that locked box, they'll pay the credit card off, they'll end the credit card, and if there's any money left over, they'll send it back to me. So that's a secured credit card and a credit builder loan. You can find these through traditional banks, and you can also find them through non-traditional lenders or what's called financial technology, fintech. app-based things directly on your smartphone. Chime has both credit builder loans and secured credit cards. Self offers credit builder loans at pretty low cost. So those are both easily accessible options. I would generally recommend you go with a traditional bank, because then when you move on to unsecured credit cards, or you want to take out a regular loan, not a credit builder loan, then if you already have a relationship with a bank, it's a lot easier to do either of those things. One of the final things is something called Experian Boost. This is real. You would link a checking account or some other account where you've been using a debit card, and it looks at a bill. You say, please look at my phone bill, see that I have paid it every month for the last 3 years. Experian goes ahead and looks at that linked account. They check that particular bill. They see that you've paid it, and they say that's a good indicator that you'll do well with credit, and it increases your score. So Experian Boost is another good option for people with no credit. If you've got bad credit or a low credit score, the general thing is to dispute what you can, negotiate directly with creditors when you can. So argue down things like fees or interest rates. Correct your habits is not quite it. Align your habits with what the credit industry would like you to do, and if that's possible. I've been working in this job for 4 years, and the number of people who have a low credit score because they had to buy things on credit and then were unable to pay it back, and by things I mean food, other necessary items for their families, and they just didn't have the income to pay it back. That's a very common story. So if possible, align your habits with what the credit bureaus are expecting. And another big thing to note here is that if an account has gone to collections, paying on it is not going to help your score. If that account has been purchased by a debt buyer, it could very easily get sold on, and someone could try and collect on it again. So it gets very hazardous very quickly when you're trying to deal with rebuilding a credit score. And for that, I would recommend you talk to either myself or CEOC. Both organizations offer qualified, experienced help in dealing with bad credit. Let's see if I'm not moving. There we go. Okay. So the other thing to know with credit building is that it is a slippery slope. If you have no credit and you get some type of credit, use it, pay in full and on time, and keep it under 30% of your limit. In 6 months, you can have a good credit score. And then all it takes is a few missed or late payments, maybe applying for a new credit card or two. And these seemingly small things can quickly bring down your credit score. It's hard to build, and it's very easy to lose. And so for that reason, we need to be preventative and proactive. We need to kind of keep an eye on things, do our best to bring that score up whenever and as much as possible, because it doesn't take much to bring your score back down. So constantly working towards that higher score is what saves you if you miss some payments, have a late payment, any of these small things that could bring the score back down. So this is where, again, I'm plugging one-on-one coaching. Building back up from a low credit score can be difficult. It often requires a very close examination of the report and kind of knowing how the credit system works. And so it's a good idea, to work with someone who just works on this regularly. I've examined hundreds of credit reports. I've helped hundreds of people rebuild their score. CEOC is a much bigger organization, and I'm sure they've done thousands of credit reports and thousands of credit rebuilding cases. And so that means they have a lot of knowledge that can really help you build that score back up faster. I got a good question here in the chat, so I'm going to address it real quick. Will closing unused credit card accounts hurt a credit score? Yes, but it may actually help you in the long run. So there's this thing called an ideal mix of credit. That's where you have 2 revolving accounts, like a regular credit card, so 2 credit cards, and 1 installment loan. So that would be something like student loans, a car loan, something like that. So if a person has 4 credit cards and they choose to close 1 or 2 of those, that's actually going to move them back closer to the ideal mix. And so in the month that they close the card, it may bring down their score, but then their credit building efforts are going to be much more powerful because they're closer to the ideal mix. So that's kind of what I mean. This is a good slide to receive that question on. There's a lot of little complexities to credit building, things that you may not be thinking of that go beyond just paying bills on time, that it's good to have experienced help with. So that takes us to the final slide. Next steps. For more information or for coaching, you can reach out to myself here at Justice Start, or Jackie over at CEOC is the contact person to reach out to with them to get some of that one-on-one coaching. Otherwise, my inbox is always open. If you just have quick questions, I'm available, and I'm sure Jackie or someone else at CEOC is also available for those quick questions.
Ian, there are a couple of other questions in the question box. One was, my credit was dropped significantly when I made a large purchase. I didn't delay in paying it, but my credit was checked before the payment was due. Can you speak to that?
Sure. So there's the idea of what's called utilization. So you've been extended a certain amount of credit. How much of that have you used? With an installment loan, you start with 100% utilization, and then as you pay it off, that goes down and down and down until it hits 0. With a credit card, it could go up and then down and up and then down because it's a revolving line of credit. It's based off of how much of the limit have you used. So when you make a large purchase, it may show up as a really high utilization. And so it's a question of, when did someone check your score? If the timing just happens to be right, then your credit score could be really reduced because it looks like you've used a lot of your limit, even if you just put it on the card briefly. I've had that happen to me where I have a credit card with cashback rewards points. So even if I have cash available that could cover a purchase, I go ahead and put it on my card first so I can get those cashback points, and then I pay it off that month. I went from like a 760 down to like a 680 credit score in 1 month, and it's because the reporting happened to catch that high utilization when it was there, even though I paid it off within the month. It should go back up pretty quickly to the pre-utilization level. And if it doesn't, that's where I would kind of say, okay, what else is going on that is keeping the score pulled down? So yeah, I've got the Q&A up. Is there a difference when the company closes your card due to inactivity? No. So that's actually a good thing. I worked with one gentleman who as far as he knew, had no credit, had not had credit in 2 or 3 years because he paid something off. And then when he noticed his score going down, and when we checked, they'd been putting an annual fee onto the card automatically. And since he didn't know that they were charging him this, he didn't pay it. And so it had actually gone to collections over time because they did not close it due to inactivity. They let that build up, and then they eventually pushed it out to collections. Any way you look at it, closing a card is going to reduce your score in that month. And then it could actually help if you're closer to that ideal mix, if that makes sense. So then how do we know what date someone checks your credit? You don't. That's kind of what makes this really difficult. And it's going to be different for each company, right? So the more I learn about accounting here at Justice Start, the more I know that when a report gets sent is definitely going to be based off of who was in the office, who was able to sign documents. You know, did Jeanette go out to lunch that day? You know, did she have something to do during lunch that pushed it back till tomorrow? You just don't know. And so that's what I say about being preventative and proactive. If you're doing your best to constantly take steps that improve your credit score, then hopefully whenever someone looks, it's going to be okay. But sometimes it can still hurt your score. Follow up from that same person, even in the case of credit cards. Yes, because your payment date may not line up with the day that they actually send information to the credit bureaus. Those are two different processes. So tracking whether or not you've made a payment versus when they send a batch of information to the credit bureau could be totally different days, and you just don't know. And it's going to vary by the company and by the office. Is it better to have no credit or low credit when trying to rent an apartment with a voucher? Is it all treated the same? So unfortunately, no credit is often treated as if it's low credit. So low credit, the idea is, oh, I think you may not wind up paying rent. No credit is, I don't know whether you will or not, so I'm just not going to rent to you. And that's why it's important to get ahead of this. There are ways to, you know, for people who don't like credit, if you do some savings each month, put it through a credit builder loan, it builds your credit and you do your savings. You don't have to really get deep into, you know, all the credit cards and car loans and all of this other stuff. There's plenty of ways to softly and safely build credit. And I would recommend doing that if you're looking at renting an apartment with a voucher. I actually argue that, and this is not the experience of a lot of people, I have seen it help as a type of coaching when people are looking at renting with a voucher. A voucher is essentially some guaranteed money from the housing authority. And when you can phrase it that way, low credit or no credit becomes a little less worrisome because the bulk of rent might be coming directly from the housing authority. And that makes these companies feel a lot more comfortable. But yeah, unfortunately, no credit and low credit are often treated the same way. That was a lot of me talking. Tina also has great input on some of these as well.
No, you can keep going, Ian, but I was going to say one thing about that. It may be worth, if someone has a voucher and they're applying for a unit, it may be worth checking in with one of the advocates like Justice Start or CEOC, because often we can work with you, make a call on behalf of, you know, either together with you or on behalf of you, and sort of tell the story in a way that sometimes it's hard for us to advocate for ourselves, but sometimes advocates can do that on your behalf, as well as share other things. If you meet with somebody and we say, you know, yes, they have a lower credit score, but look at these letters and records from previous landlords that show that they paid their rent on time for the past 5 years. And as Ian said, a bulk of the rent is coming from another source. It may make you more, make them more likely to take a chance. So that's something else to think about when, if that's a case that you're dealing with. And Ian, there's another one about paying off the car. Do you see that one?
I do. So I paid my car off last year with consistent, never late payments. I thought my score would jump up, but it basically crawled, or it went up like a teeny bit. I also heard it's best to make 2 payments per month instead of 1 on a credit card. Is that true? Okay. So on the first part, that's what I mean about, I mentioned how credit building is a slippery slope. It takes a lot to climb up it. You have to be very careful. And then it's very easy. It's kind of the way the system is set up. It's a lot easier to fall back down than it is to build up. And so you can think of a car loan as a utilization ratio question. So let's, I don't know your particular situation, but let's imagine it's a new car, right? So we'll go like kind of mid to lower tier. Let's say it's a $20,000 car loan, right? You put some money down, you got a car loan. 20K was the original loan amount. So that's your 100% utilization. If you're making $250 payments each month, then the utilization ratio is changing, but it's only changing by a couple of percentages each time, right? Like each payment is maybe 1.5% of the total cost of the car. And so it's taking a while to actually bring down that utilization ratio and thereby increase your score, right? So car loans generally don't quickly build credit because there's a high utilization, tend to be high payments. Each of those high payments doesn't move the needle very much. And so you see slow credit building with that. When you pay it off, it actually can negatively impact your score because you had an active installment loan, and when you pay it off completely, it can even hurt your score because now you don't have an installment account that you used to have. So yeah, in general, car loans aren't going to be huge. You asked about real quick. So making 2 payments per month instead of 1 on a credit card. Is that going to have a big credit building effect? Maybe. So again, there's a couple of ways to look at that. There's the utilization ratio. So if you have used a lot of your limit and you're making double payments, you're actually bringing down your use or the amount of your limit that you've used so far. You're bringing it down much more quickly, and that brings your score up faster, right? So think about it from the perspective of a bank or a lender. If you're able to quickly pay off a loan, that's great. You pay it down, then hey, maybe this person is going to take out more of a loan from us. That'd be great, right? The bank would love to see that. So quickly paying down utilization is great, and it's going to increase your score quickly. But again, what if we're talking about making 2 small payments, right? So if I have $1,000 limit and I've used 950 of that, I could make a single $20 payment, or I could make 2 $10 payments. That's probably going to have the same effect, right? If I could make a single $25 payment and then I choose to make 2, I'm actually, what is the minimum payment on the card? If the minimum were 25 and then I paid 25 twice in a month, that's going to A, quickly bring down my utilization ratio, and B, it's twice the minimum. So that could increase how quickly I build credit. One of the things actually that I didn't mention in this, FICO, how they actually calculate a credit score is super top secret, industrial secret, right? They don't let anybody know how they actually calculate the credit score. And so most of this is, again, why you want to work with someone with some experience. I've seen twice the minimum payment really bring down cards quickly and bring up credit scores quickly. However, I also have seen where people keep making lots of small payments and it doesn't have that much of a credit building effect because it really comes down to utilization. That's implicit knowledge that I have. I've just done a lot of this, and therefore I have these recommendations built off of lots of other people's experience. CEOC as an institution has like thousands of times that knowledge with the number of people they've got working there, and especially who have been there doing this work much longer than me. When you don't actually get to see how they calculate the thing, you really want the recommendation of people who've done a lot of it, who can bring that implicit knowledge to bear to help you.
You know, one other thing with that question, Ian, that I was thinking was, did it also reflect back to the question about when during the month is the credit? So when I first read it, I thought, well, are they saying, well, if I pay twice a month, even if it's the same amount I would pay once a month, would it make a difference if I happen to make that payment before they actually, sent it in? So, and again, if we're talking about two really small payments, that's probably not going to make much of a difference. But if somebody charged a large amount and paid half of the large, before it was actually the date that it was checked, then possibly that could make a difference.
Yeah, that actually brings up, as you're looking to do credit building, one of the things that is, and when they report stuff. So I often recommend that people get, if they're very leery of credit building or touching credit at all, I usually recommend getting a secured credit card and then making a single small purchase each month. One of the first people I worked with on that, and kind of trying to use that strategy, she did that. She had her credit card. She would go and buy snacks at a store, under $10, and then she'd go home, and while she's sitting there eating her snacks, she would pay off the credit card. And when we pulled her credit report, her utilization ratio was 0% for like several months that she'd been doing this, because she was putting a charge on the card and then paying it off so quickly that it never was reported to the bureaus as use. It just happened too fast. And so I actually changed my recommendation based on that experience. Now I say, go buy your snacks, but wait until the bill comes. You know that by the time they've sent a bill to you, they have also reported it to the credit bureaus. So once the bill comes, you have 30 days to pay it off anyways, so you're not like in trouble. But make your purchase, when the bill comes, pay it off, and that builds the score. But if you're too quick, it may never get reported at all. So it really depends on the company, how they report, when they report, etc. So it's important to have a system that is going to work regardless of when they actually send the information.
And I would add to that, I've had people that have put something that's like a cell phone bill that they're paying every month anyway, and that there's not a fee for them to pay it by a credit card. And for me, I don't know about those of you on the call, but if I wait to get a paper bill, I sometimes, I'm going to get around to doing it. So what I found helpful for people, if it's a monthly charge and they set an automatic payment to happen from their bank account. Because the other thing is you're trying to do this, but then if you're late with your payment, it has the negative impact. So it's kind of like not even thinking about it. It's something you're going to pay anyway. You have it come out of your checking account or savings account every month. It's kind of an automatic thing. It doesn't require anything on your part to remember. And it's on, as Ian said, on long enough for it to get reported and help you to build the credit. I also wanted just to say, a separate thing around, this is a slow process, to build it. And the other reason for reaching out to somebody or even doing it with a friend, once you have information, but, just having a buddy, because we all, with any kind of behavior change that we're trying to make, I always think of it as, it's January, we're trying to exercise or we're trying to eat better and all of those things that, it's a challenge to make changes. And especially when it comes to money now with, almost everybody is in a worse position now because of COVID than they might have been a year ago, and so it's stressful and all of that. So just having a support person so that, if you're making progress and then for whatever reason you kind of fall off a little bit, that's okay. You jump back on as soon as you can, and having somebody as kind of a coach can provide that support and help you from getting down on yourself and be able to remind, we all need those kind of reminders that we're in it for the long haul and we're all pretty much doing this ourselves. So that's the other reason for reaching out to help when you're ready to start making some changes.
I want to thank you both for this wonderful presentation, and I'm just keeping an eye on the clock. Any last words before I share the next webinar dates? You guys good? You guys are wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Crystal.
Yeah, no problem. I'm gonna just share the screen again and wait for the delay. So I wanted to call attention to the liaisons page. I have the URL at the bottom. So if you go to the city website, cambridgema.gov/departments/office of the housing liaison, you'll get to the main website, and that's where we put up the latest news and the upcoming events, and the tenant rights and resource notification guide is there. You can click right through and see translated documents on this resource page. So I highly recommend you visiting the website. And the next webinar is next Tuesday, the January 25th at 3 p.m. It's with the Cambridge Police Department. They'll be presenting information on how to protect against the latest scams, especially now in a time of COVID. People are finding new ways to exploit vulnerabilities. So please sign up on Zoom, and you can get that information right off our website. So I'm gonna end the webinar, and I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their day. So thank you. Bye.